right out of the gate. The commissioner there talking about the league's issues with diversity, addressing questions about the fact that there are just 2 black head coaches in the NFL, 1 biracial coach. That represents less than 10% of the 32 teams in the league. Also taking a lot of questions on the Washington football team, now the Washington Commanders. In fact, he didn't really spend all of that much time talking about the upcoming Super Bowl, though he did address some of the changes that folks in Southern California have seen with teams coming and going, a whole lot of shifts there. Eben Navi-Williams is a sports business reporter at Sportico. He was at that presser in Los Angeles, got the second to last question in before they wrap things up there. So, Eben, since you were there, can you just give our viewers a sense of what the vibe was like at this news conference? Because as someone who's been to these before, I certainly felt like the tone was just a little bit different than they typically are.
Yeah, it's always tough at these things because you get a lot of press here that want to ask questions about what's happening in Mexico, what's happening in Germany.
Right.
This conference, as you saw, obviously focusing very heavily on 2 very big news stories that have come out or been intensified in the past week or so. One being the civil rights lawsuit filed by Brian Flores over discrimination, and secondly being the NFL's probe into the Washington football team, which is essentially reopening in a new form, and all of the kind of back of room negotiations that led to the details in that original probe not becoming public. Those were the 2 main things that Roger, and I'm sure he was expecting to be asked a raft of questions on both of those. But those were the 2 main things that he was drilled on today.
Yeah, and I have to say, I got a little bit of a chuckle, and I think everybody did there, too, that Deflategate came up again for like the 8th year in a row. I'm guessing that he wasn't expecting that one. That was kind of humorous. So let's dig into some of these big topics today. You mentioned it, Brian Flores' racial discrimination lawsuit. Here's what Commissioner Goodell said there.
I found all of the allegations, whether they were based on racism or discrimination or the integrity of our game, all of those, to me, were very disturbing. They are very serious matters to us on all levels, and we need to make sure we get to the bottom of all of them. Integrity of the game is obviously an important element, just as making sure we have the right culture in our organizations across the league and at clubs. But we are going to look into that.
I mean, what's your take on Goodell's answer? That was just one of several on this topic. I mean, he didn't avoid the tough questions. You got to give him credit for that.
Yeah, I think Roger and the whole NFL is kind of walking a delicate dance here, where the official position has to be, we don't racially discriminate when we hire, because there's now legal proceedings that are arguing that. However, he also can't say that everything is fine, because as of last week, there was 1 black head coach in the league. There's now 3, 2 of which were hired after this lawsuit started. He knows, and I think owners also understand, that the results have not been good. So Roger and NFL owners are essentially saying simultaneously, this lawsuit is bogus, there's no discrimination, while also saying or admitting that, yes, we've done a really bad job at hiring minorities into positions across the league. And it's not just coaches. It's also front office personnel. It's personnel at the league office. It's people at NFL media. There's all different parts of the NFL ecosystem that have done a really poor job here. So he's kind of has to be in the middle there in terms of saying some things are not right, but also admitting that there are problems.
A black reporter got up and said, as a black man in particular, he wants to know why the league just can't do better. Here's what Goodell said on that.
We just have to do a better job. We have to look, is there another thing that we can do to make sure we're attracting that best talent here and making our league inclusive? If I had the answer right now, I would give it to you. I would have implemented it. I think what we have to do is just continue and find and look and step back and say, we're not doing a good enough job here.
Goodell has said that the league will review efforts to promote diversity. At the press conference today, he said they're not only going to look within, but also how they can promote diversity in their partnerships outside of the league. I mean, as someone who covers the NFL, and listen, I know if you had all the answers here, but any things that you say, hey, here's where you can start?
Yeah, and shout out to Jim Trotter for asking that question, because it was a good one. And the interesting thing here, I think, and a lot of people around the NFL will admit this, is that the problems that they're having in their hiring practices now are really a result of bad development within teams at the coordinator position, at the assistant coach position for the past 8 or 9 years. So in some ways, there's no easy fix right now because the head coach hiring essentially lags behind all the other hiring that teams do. I think that what a lot of people would like to see the league do is do a better job prioritizing hiring and promoting coaches, minorities in lower down positions, so that when it comes time in 5 or 6 years for 9 open head coaching positions, as there were this year, there's just there's a larger pool of minority candidates out there to be interviewed that are highly qualified. That's I think one of the problems the NFL is going to have is that good policy right now solves this problem in 2029 maybe, and doesn't solve this problem in 2022.
No, it sure doesn't. Eben, you asked the commissioner about its revenue goals and how the pandemic has been affecting that. And I thought it was funny. He kind of skirted your question. I mean, he had prepared answers. He knew all the other diversity questions were coming, but he answered you by talking about fan growth, not money. What'd you make of that answer?
Yeah, it's funny. And I asked Roger this question almost every year now because he set a really big target, $25 billion annual revenue target for 2027. I think the easy answer is that the NFL feels very comfortable about that number. They just signed another $115 billion worth of TV deals back in March at massive increases. The league is also looking into selling a piece of its own media, its NFL Network, NFL Web, et cetera. I think the NFL, if they look at COVID, it was not as bad on long-term growth as maybe they feared originally. And the truth is that as the media landscape changes, the NFL is more popular than ever, you can argue. And that's going to mean a lot of money in the NFL coffers moving forward.
Well, Eben, keep asking those good business questions. You and the Deflategate guy coming back with the same stuff year after year. But, hey, if it's still an issue, you got to bring it up. Thank you for running to a camera to talk to us so quickly. And have a hell of a lot of fun out there covering the Super Bowl. I know it's work, but it's also a great time, too. So enjoy yourself out there.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.